First of all, I'm extremely happy to have Deanna and Randy back from vacation. They just spent 10 days, I guess it was, back in Missouri, talking and meeting Deanna's kinfolk back there. It's kind of a different world back there, and they got a different way of talking. And I've learned a few things over the years about the 34 years we've been married, about Missouri and about the Midwest, and it's just my responsibility to relay them to you, I guess. Some of them I have to relay it to y'all. Actually, I probably used that wrong. Y'all isn't the right term. If I was talking to Jesse about his boat, they'd say, how you all doing with your boat? But if I'm talking to all of you, it's all y'all. All y'all. I can't even say it. It's all y'all. So I'm glad all y'all are here this morning. Some of the things I've learned is there's bugs back there. Deanna's told me about the bugs. I spent a week there one weekend on when it was 100 degrees and 95% humidity in August. So I don't envy them being back there this time of year. But they got like I said, they got bugs. They got what do they call them? We don't see them here. Cockroaches. They got cockroaches. They got this type of bug they call no-see-ums. I don't know how they know what they are if they can't see them, but they're no-see-ums. They also have a bug that I've heard of, I've never seen personally, but apparently it's this fly that flies around and lights up his posterior as he flies around. Lightning bugs, fireflies, whatever. I've never personally seen them, but I guess it's just one more example of God's creativity of what He can do. So apparently they do exist. I guess maybe you can kind of see why I stayed home this time. I didn't go. So see if I can get this thing fired up here. It's the first time I tried to use this. Usually I have somebody else do it for me. What we're talking about today is going to be transformation and how we can change, how changing deepens our faith and widens our impact. When Andy gave me, Pastor Andy gave me some advice about doing sermons, he said, one of the things you have to ask yourself is, so what? So what you're talking about, so what? What does that mean? So in this case, what we're talking about is transformation. That's what we want to accomplish. That's what we want to let God accomplish for us. We actually don't accomplish it on our own. We let God accomplish it for us. So let's look at the passage of Scripture here that we're talking about here. I have to move this way just a little bit. To Him and through faith in Him, we may approach God with freedom and confidence. I ask you, therefore, not to be discouraged because of my sufferings for you, which are your glory. And as Andy mentioned last week, my sufferings for you is, Paul is talking here, he's writing a letter to the Ephesians, and Paul is in prison. So he's talking about his sufferings in prison, which are for their glory. For this reason, I kneel before the Father, from whom every family in heaven and on earth derives its name. I want to just pause here just real quickly, too, and make a point about something that is very important in this passage. And sometimes you read Scriptures and you kind of skip across something and it doesn't really resonate with it. You don't know what it means. But from whom every family in heaven and on earth derives its name. Names are very important to the ancient Jewish people, the ancient Hebrews. Nothing really existed for them until it was named. Even clear back in the time of Adam, God brought the animals to Adam to be named. So as far as they're concerned, it didn't exist until it was named. And the names came from, the people's names, men's names especially, came from their father. So in the New Testament, when they're talking about John and James, they were John and James, sons of Zebedee. When they talked about Jesus, though, what did they say about Jesus? It was Jesus of Nazareth. And that was almost, when you think about it, that's almost a derogatory term in their culture, because they were saying that, they didn't say Jesus, son of Joseph. Mary was pregnant when they got married. So they were actually in a derogatory way saying that Jesus was an illegitimate child. If they didn't know the lineage, if they didn't know who their father was, they would add the city of where they came from. So it was Jesus of Nazareth. So what this is saying here, every family in heaven on earth derives its name from God. That means we are children of God. We are named. We are children of God. So on with the text. I pray that out of his glorious riches he may strengthen you with power through his Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power together with all the Lord's holy people to grasp how wide, how long, and high and deep is the love of Christ.
Amen.
And to know this love that surpasses knowledge. It's to know a love that surpasses the knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure with all the fullness of God. Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us, to him be glory in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever. Amen. May the Lord add his blessing to the reading of his word. So, like I said, this is what we're talking about this week, transformation. Specifically, we're going to explore how that Christ has the ability, the power to transform us from one state to another. The dictionary defines transforming as to make a thorough or dramatic change in the form, appearance, or character of. Specifically then, we're going to look at how Christ can make a change in our form and character of all of us, including me, including you, and including me. So the first, there's lots of different, the New Testament is full of different stories of Christ and the transformations he makes and the healings that he does. But I picked out a couple here that I would just want to go through real quick and have you see. There's lots of them, but these are a couple of my favorite ones. First of all, John chapter 2. This was just as a little basis, a little if you want to follow along, John chapter 2. What it is, it's when Jesus transformed the water into wine. He was at a wedding, and they ran out of wine, and they came to him. It's not a huge deal, but it's a social disaster, and no matter what it is, Christ is wants to be there to help you do it. So there was a wedding in Cana, in the city of Cana, in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and the disciples were also invited to the event. As the festivities went on, they ran out of wine. So Jesus' mother came to Jesus and said, "They're out of wine." And Jesus says, "Dear woman, that's not our problem. It's not our problem. My time has not yet come." He's saying that his time hasn't come to start performing miracles yet. But his mother asked him. And she had faith that he'd do something, because she turned to the servants and says, "Do whatever he asks you to do." So sitting nearby, there were 6 stone water jars, the kind that's used for ceremonial washing. And Jesus instructed the servants to take the water, to fill them with water, and then dip out some of the water and take it to the master of ceremonies of the banquet. So here's the water. It's not going to work. I was afraid of this. This is no miracle I'm doing. It's science, but there's wine. So they took the wine, or when the master of ceremonies tasted the wine, that was water that's now wine, not knowing where it came from, although the servants knew, he took the wine to the host and said, "Everybody serves their cheaper, or the best wine first, and then after the guests have had plenty to drink, he then takes it. Then bring out the cheaper wine." He says, "But you have kept the best for last. Kept the best wine for the last." And this was the first time that Jesus had revealed his glory and after that, his disciples believed in him. So, what is it that Jesus transformed? He transformed the water into wine. It's no small miracle that water be changed into wine. It's actually a pretty huge deal. I did a little research on it, and it turns out that there's been books written about what it would take to transform water into wine. Like I said, what I did was no miracle, and it's not the best wine, it's not wine, and I definitely wouldn't advise anybody to be drinking it. So what did I transform? Really, what I transformed was nothing. What I did was a cheap magician's trick that really didn't work the first time because I didn't shake this stuff up. But what this was is just basic science. What Jesus did was far beyond that. A water molecule. This is a water molecule, a model of a water molecule. If you remember from your high school chemistry classes, there's 2 hydrogen atoms and there's 1 oxygen atom. That's H2O. That's what water is. Wine, it's a little more complicated than that. This is a wine molecule. And like I said, I don't understand what I was trying to read about it. It's just absolutely huge, the difference between those 3 atoms in water and what that is there. It's an amazing thing that he did, and it was truly a miracle. And it wasn't just cheap wine, it was the best wine. It was the best wine that they had. It kind of brings to mind how Jesus does transform. This is just colored. It's colored with a couple different chemicals, and it's only on the surface. What was there originally is still there. It's just changed color. But what Jesus does when he transforms, he changes the inner being. He changes the inner you, and that shows through to the outer. It's a different process. It's from inside to outside. There's a technique that I've learned over the years, and I think a lot of you probably do it too, is when you read stories and whatnot. You make it to where you insert yourself in the story. Anybody do that? And you're reading a story and think, well, what would I do if I was there, and what would it be like if I was there? So when you read the Bible, it's kind of a neat technique to be able to as you're reading along, stop and think. Who's there? What are they wearing? What's the temperature like? What's the sounds that are going on? What's the smells? Who's around you? And using that technique, I want us to look at a story here. Mark chapters 4 and 5. Let's just back up just a second and talk about the book of Mark. There's two main sections of the Bible: the Old Testament and the New Testament. They make up 66 books. They're not all one book of the Bible. It's 66 books in that Bible, and the New Testament has the first four books are Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They're what we call the Gospels. And the first 3, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, are the Synoptic Gospels. Synoptic because they're real similar. Synonyms, synoptic, they're real similar. And the reason for that is they probably all had kind of the same sources for the stories. There was oral traditions. It's called oral traditions that were going around. It's stories that were being told amongst the people, and it's real similar sometimes to what you probably do when you get a family get together. You got a family function, family reunion, and everybody sits around and says, "Do you remember when Johnny jumped off the boat into the lake?" And somebody else will go, "No, it wasn't Johnny, it was Jim." And they correct each other as the story goes along, and pretty soon you have family stories. You have stories that are going on, and those stories are lost unless somebody sits and writes them down. As time goes by, as people die off, and as new family members come, those stories die out unless somebody writes them down. And that's what was going on here in the first century. The apostles were getting older. Some were dying off. Some of the stories that were being told amongst the people as an oral tradition were getting lost because people didn't know them anymore. So some of the people of that time, John Mark is one of them, that wrote these things down. Mark is probably the first of the Gospels that was written. There's been some debate over that over the years, and for a long time people figured it was Matthew because Matthew is more expanded. But we're beginning to think that probably Mark was the first one written, and Matthew expanded on that. But what happened is Mark probably wrote down these teachings as preachings of Peter. Peter doesn't have a gospel. Peter wrote some books that are later in the Bible. But probably it's Peter's preachings that Mark wrote down. Because as far as we know, Mark didn't personally know Jesus. I think it was... So as we start on these chapters here, I think it was Pastor Andy that was talking about the woman at the well and the woman in Samaria. And the first part of that, he was saying that Jesus just had to go through Samaria. Jesus had to go through Samaria. And Andy interpreted that as Jesus just had to go through Samaria. Here we go. So, and then what happened. And that's kind of what I think. Kind of keep that in the back of your mind, because I think that's kind of the way this works here too. So work with me here now. Use your imagination. Turn this on so I can see what I'm reading. Oh, it's dead. I can't turn that. Oh, it's on now. As evening came, Jesus says, let's go to the other side of the lake. So if you're inserting yourself in the story, what are you thinking? It's evening. It's been a long day. I'm tired. I'm hungry. I don't want to go to the other side of the lake. But you're not wanting to sound like a whiny 2-year-old. You go, okay. You go along with everybody else. Let's go. Let's go to the other side of the lake. But really you wanted to stay there. But this is one of those things I was talking about. Jesus just had to go to the other side of the lake. You know there's a reason for this, right? Then what happens? You barely get started. You're in the boat. You shove off. And Jesus goes to the back of the boat. We call it the stern, but they call it the back of the boat in the Bible. Went to the back of the boat, lays down, and goes to sleep. And you're thinking, great, he's asleep. I'm here with my new tunic that I just got at Tunics for Less. And it's probably going to get ruined. So you're taking off, and it's beginning to get colder. And the wind's starting to pick up. And it's starting to rain. And you're getting colder yet. You getting cold? You're getting cold? I figured you would be. And you're going along, and pretty soon it's really raining. You're soaked to the skin. And the waves are beginning to crash over the side of the boat. And the lightning is going, and the wind is howling. And pretty soon you're standing with your new Nikes with water about up to your knees in the boat. Thinking, what is going on here? Finally, somebody, one of the disciples, we don't know who, it doesn't say, decides to go look for Jesus. There he is, laying in the back, sound asleep, head on a pillow, no snoring he makes. He goes and wakes Jesus up. Jesus gets up. As he wakes up Jesus, he says, "Teacher, don't you care that we're going to drown?" Jesus gets up, he looks around, looks at the storm, looks at the disciples, looks at you, and says, "O ye of little faith, don't you have any faith yet?" He rebukes the wind and tells the sea to be calm. Suddenly, it's totally calm. The sea's calm, the skies begin to clear, and you're thinking, the disciples were all scared, not me. I knew exactly what was going to happen. I trust you, Jesus. You'd fix it for us. Of course, you read the book, so it's easy to know what Jesus did do. It's not so easy to know what he will do for you, what he can do. It's all about faith. So the disciples are talking among themselves, going, "Who is this that even the wind and the waves obey him?" The rest of the trip's pretty uneventful. It's a flat, calm lake. Going to the other side of the lake. About daylight, you get to the other side of the lake, and you'd heard about this crazy guy that was over there. This crazy guy that ran around, demon-possessed probably, and he's howling and running around naked and yelling and screaming. And they tried to chain him up, and they couldn't chain him up. But when they did chain him up, he could always get away. And you're thinking, I hope we don't meet this guy. But as you approach land, here he comes, running toward the boat. And you're thinking, oh boy, here we go. I think maybe I'll stay in the boat. I'll guard the boat, Jesus. You go ahead. You go first. I'll let you go first. So Jesus gets out of the boat. This demon-possessed man runs toward him. This is important, I think. Runs to him, falls down, and begs Jesus. Bows to him, falls down, begs him, don't torture us before our time. Don't throw us into the abyss, into the pit, into the outer darkness. I think this is important because if, let's just say that I knew somebody was coming that had the ability and maybe the desire to do me great harm, and I knew he was going to come through that door, and there wasn't anything I could do about it, would I stand there and wait for him to get there? I'd be hightailing it. I'd be going the other direction. But this demon-possessed man seemingly had no choice in the matter but to come to Jesus and fall at his feet and beg him for mercy, which I think is a very, very significant point as to about who's got the power and who's got control. Jesus, the man knew who Jesus was. He says, Jesus, Son of the Most High God, in the name of God, I beg you, don't torture me. Because Jesus had already at that point asked him to come out, asked the spirits to come out. He asked them their name. He says, what is your name? And he says, we are Legion, because there's so many of us in here. So you're thinking, you're still in a boat, but you're watching what's going on. Legion. There's 2,000 men in a Roman legion. Is it possible there's 2,000 demons in this man? I think most of you know the story from here. You know, the demon-possessed, or the demons, begged Jesus not to throw them in the abyss. They said, send us into that herd of pigs. Let us go into that herd of pigs that's over there on the hillside. There was a 2,000 quantity number, 2,000 pigs on the hillside. So Jesus gave them permission to do that. That's important too. They couldn't go until Jesus gave them permission to do it. Jesus gave them permission to go in the pigs. The pigs ran down the hill, ran into the water, and were all drowned. Soon you're noticing there's a gathering of people around Jesus. And people have heard what happened. So you're watching what's going on. The guy's acting pretty much okay now, so now you can get out of the boat. You go over there, and this man that was absolutely not controllable, absolutely break chains, would get away whenever he could, and howled and cut himself and ran around naked, is now sitting clothed and fully sane at the feet of Jesus. The people that are gathering around, seeing what's happening, they're beginning to get a little bit. They're beginning to get a little bit nervous. They're beginning to think, who is this? What is this? We just lost 2,000 pigs. I am not comfortable with this. So they asked Jesus to leave, and Jesus says, "Okay." He starts to go. As he's getting in the boat, the formerly demon-possessed man comes to Jesus and says, "Let me go with you. I want to follow you. I want to be one of your disciples." And Jesus said something that I don't know if it was, there probably is some other passages, I can't think of them at the moment, where Jesus says, "No, I want you to stay here. I want you to stay here go to your family and tell them what happened to you. Tell them how God's grace has saved you." And that is something that usually you see, come follow me, come be my disciple, come, go, come, move. But in this case, he says, stay. There's some truths about this in this story that I want to make sure we understand. Jesus always has a reason to send you where he does. Amen. Sometimes we don't know what it is. Sometimes all we can do is be obedient. He wanted to go across the lake. I'm sure the disciples, some of them were just like the story I was talking about. I don't want to go. I want to stay here. There's a crazy guy over there. It's been a long day. Let's go in the morning. But Jesus had a reason. And you could see what the reason was. You need to be encouraged. No matter what storms or what trials that are put in front of you, the enemy is going to fail, and God is going to prevail. You don't have to worry about that. You can be encouraged that when he tasks you to do something, he's going to give you the tools to do it. The enemy is going to fail. This is one that I touched on just a little bit. You can't run from God. You can't say, no, I don't want to do it. You can't say, even you can say it, you can actually do it. But, and I did this myself for a lot of years. You just can't run from him. If you try, he'll gently, continuously talk to you, coax you, and sooner or later, most of us will end up doing what it is that God asks us to do. Jesus has absolute power over the demonic. Well, I think a lot of us have watched stuff in Hollywood, movies, TV, where there's this great battle going on between the demons and God, and it's a great huge battle. It's portrayed as the battle of good over evil. It's not a battle. This story really shows that there really is no power. The demonic has no power whatsoever. The only thing they're allowed to do is what God allows them to do, what Jesus allows them to do. And those are done for His purposes, for His reasons. Think about the storm that was thrown up in front of them. It says Jesus rebuked the wind. Rebuke is a strong word. It means the Greek word for it means absolutely power of someone who has authority over something, rebuking it. So if that storm, if it came from God, I don't think it would have been rebuked. And some of you are going to go, you're telling me that Satan, the enemy, has power over the weather? Well, I think there's some situations that he does. Limited for God's reasons, for His purposes. There's in Job where there was the tornado, the fire wind that came and destroyed his crops and whatnot. So those were brought on by the enemy, but they were allowed to happen through Jesus because of God wanted to use them for his reasons. When Jesus isn't welcome, He's going to leave. Now, I'm not saying that He's going to leave you. What I'm saying is He's always be with you. He's always going to be by you. But there's times when if you reject Him, He's going to back off. He's a gentleman. He's not going to force His way in. It's always a choice. It's a choice for you. If Jesus isn't welcome, He's going to leave. So transformation is what it's all about. Jesus has the power to transform. In this story, the man was possessed by a legion of demons. He ran around naked, howling, cutting himself. I don't know that any of us have any troubles that are worse than that. And Jesus transformed him in an instant. In an absolute moment, he was transformed into the sane, peaceful, clothed man sitting at His feet. He's sitting at the feet of Jesus, and he wanted to become His follower. I don't think any of us have a worse transformation than that, but we've all been transformed by the power of Jesus. We're not the people we were. Amen. We're not the people we're going to be. Sometimes it's a process. Sometimes it happens quickly, like it happened with the man. Most of the time, it's a process. It takes time. There's things that God works on. There's so many things He has to work on me that He can't do them all at once. Well, I guess He could transform them all at once, but what usually happens is He convicts me of a certain thing, and we work on that together. Then He convicts me of something else, we work on that together. There's lots of different ways that Jesus will work with us to transform us. So how was the man's life transformed? Through the power of Jesus. And what was the result of this transformation? I don't know that we really know the total result. We know what the signs were. But someday in heaven, I want to meet this man. I think, you stop and think about it. It's been 2,000 years since that happened. If he only talked to a few of his family members and a few of his friends, and they became convinced of Jesus' salvation and Jesus' love and Jesus' mercy and His grace, and gave their life over to Christ, that over a period of time could have multiplied exponentially. There could be thousands of people that have come to Christ through this one man. And that's because Jesus told him to stay. He told him to stay where he is and talk to his family and friends. I think sometimes we forget that sometimes we're told to stay. There's missionaries that are told to go, to leave, to go somewhere else. But I think most of us are called to stay. Stay where we are. Witness to those people around us and bring them to Christ. These are just two stories. There's lots of stories, like I said, in the Bible. So what's your story? Is your story still being written? Oh, mine's still being written. I haven't come to the end of it. God's the author of this story. He's the one that's doing the transformation. He's the one that's doing the leading and the guiding. So what is your story? You can live a transformed life. You can live a transformed life, but not under your own power. None of the things that happened in these stories happened by the power of the people involved. It was through the power of Christ. The wine was transformed by Christ's power. The man was transformed by Christ's power. And the wind and the waves were calmed by Christ's power. It wasn't through any power of their own. Whenever it is you try to do these things on your own, they're always doomed for failure. They don't succeed because you're working on your own power. Paul said that when he is weak, then he's strong. And that's where we need to operate from. That's our base of operation. And when we're weak, we can rely on Christ for His strength. And His strength then is strong. So when we're weak, that's when we're the strongest. Can a leopard change its spots? The prophet Jeremiah talked about that. Can a leopard change its spots? He can't do anything to change who he is. He can't do anything to change what he is. But God made that leopard. He can change it if He wants to. He can change the spots. And maybe he'd be a tiger. I don't know. We have many opportunities every day to witness to those around us. And I encourage you to pray about it. Pray that God will put people in your path that you can talk to and that you can witness to. And who knows, I've heard it said that it takes, I think it was 26 different people talking to one individual to where they finally will understand what's being said and bring their lives to Christ. Maybe you'll be the first one. Maybe you'll be the 26th one. It doesn't matter as long as we follow and do what it is that we're being led to do. Maybe 1,000 years from now, there'll be 1,000 people that have come to Christ because of you. Just like I think has probably happened with this one man here. There's no way of knowing. But again, Jesus told him to stay. Jesus gave him the tools. Jesus gave him the testimony. And I'm sure that there was great results from that. So I just encourage you to be bold. Encourage you to go out and talk to people. Talk to them about your faith. Talk to them about what Jesus has done for you. You have a story to tell, and who knows, someday there may be thousands and thousands that will come to Christ because of you.